Bravo and Tango had been orphaned when they were so young that they had to be bottle fed, first by a different rehabber who then turned them over to us. And even though we have done everything possible to get these cats to stay away from people, it's just not working. Whenever the keepers go out there, they usually dress up as trees. Right now, you'll see they're only in half tree dress because they were just protecting their legs. They weren't trying to hide from the cats. But we tried to disassociate them from food and people and have gone through all of our regular rehabbing processes, and the boys are just still too tame around people. That can spell death for them when we release them. If they come up to a person in the wild, they're going to get shot, or they're going to be reported as being rabid because nobody expects a bobcat to come up and be friendly. Our rehabbers love these cats, and it's really painful for them to do this, but what we're going to have to do is teach them that people are just really bad news. And we think that Tango has the best chance of going free. He's a little bit more skittish than his brother Bravo. So what they're doing is catching Tango, and they'll move him in with Alpha. Alpha's another orphaned bobcat kitten, but she did not imprint on people. And so we're hoping that she's going to teach Tango not to trust people and to stay away from people. Meanwhile, we're going to work more with just Bravo to teach him about why he should stay away from people, and I'll explain that a little bit more later on. There's an expressway on the other side of that wall, not the grass wall, but there's a concrete block wall on the other side, so it's kind of hard to hear what Jamie's instructing Catherine and Elisa to do. But essentially what she's doing is giving them some practice time with a bobcat who's not trying to kill them. As you can see, this cat's right up in my face and he's not trying to rip my face off. So that's bad news when you want them to be wild, but it's good news for the purpose of them getting the opportunity to get the feel for how to net a cat, how to get the net to flip over the end so the cat can't escape in a situation like this where it's not putting the keepers in a tremendous amount of peril, even though he's certainly fully intact with claws and teeth. And it's another opportunity for him to realize that people are not your friend. You don't want to come anywhere near people. They could net you, they could really be scary, and so they're trying very hard to both teach him to stay away from people and yet not hurt him. This is the hardest thing for our keepers to do because they just love these cats and they want them to succeed in the wild. And yet, if we're friendly to them and treat them like pets, that's never going to happen. So even though this is really hard, I appreciate the fact that our volunteers care so much about these cats succeeding in the wild that they're willing to go through some of this tough love. For those who have really loved watching Bravo and Tango grow up together and all of the cute cuddling and everything that they do on the cameras, I'm really sorry that you guys are going to miss out on that. We do have nest cams over on the cage where Alpha and Tango will be, but those cameras they don't have a recording feature on them. So I don't know how often people would be able to log in and see what's going on there because there's so many of those cameras on that cage. I think there's like 6. So you'd have to be bouncing around from one camera to the next to the next to the next to see what was going on. So I really apologize for the fact that the 2 cats together are not going to be on the side where the really nice Explore cameras are. But the reason is we don't need to scare Alpha. We don't need her to be any more afraid of people than she already is. She's really ready to go, and we didn't want to put her through being netted and brought over here when we need to train these boys to stay away from people as much as they possibly can.
You're being so polite about this.
This next little bit of our process is what we do when we actually net a bobcat, even a wild bobcat. We'll stand on the net so that the cat leaping away from the person will kind of double the net over. As you can see, when she lifts that up, she can keep him trapped in the net until she can get it up to the door of the squeeze cage. And then they're using the other net to just guide him backwards into the cage so that he realizes he can back out through the hole now. That all went really smoothly, and then they will cover him up so that he's not freaked out and banging his head against the wall of the cage as we move him. and Jamie just put a couple of little stoppers in place to keep the door from banging around and being scary. Ordinarily, we would use those measures to keep the cat being moved from being freaked out. In his case, we did it just because he's already had a really bad day so far. He's never been around people this closely. He always seemed to think that people would be pretty cool, but then when they come into the enclosure, he's finding out, you know what, I just don't want to be around people at all. And that will be the best thing possible to getting him ready to go back to the wild. So he's in the front half of Alpha's enclosure here. These enclosures are over 4,000 square feet. And he's in the front half and she's in the back half, and there's a fine mesh over the wire in between them so that they can get used to each other before we put them together. Now what they're doing is they're going back in with Bravo, and they're going to, again, follow him around, net Bravo a few times, and this gives our volunteers the chance to perfect their techniques, which may actually save a wild cat in the wild someday. Sometimes when cats get hit by cars, they are still pretty mobile, and we need to be able to catch them on the first try. So this is an opportunity for them to get used to how the nets work and what does and doesn't hold a cat still. And it's also training for Bravo that you do not want to be around people. They're just going to do this with him for a little bit and then leave the enclosure. So he's not going anywhere. It's just a way of trying to dissuade him from being people friendly. We've just never had this problem that cats were just so people oriented that we've had to go to these extremes to teach them to stay away from people. You can see a lot of our videos, a lot of our releases, and more about our Bobcat rehab program, including a training program that you can take for free that teaches you all of these same things that you're seeing here, all of the techniques that we use at Big Cat Rescue. And that will be at bigcatrescue.org/bobcat-rehab. bigcatrescue.org/bobcat-rehab.